Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go! Hey, it's George the Antique Nomad, and I'm really excited because I'm getting ready for another appraisal fair. I'm doing the New Harmony Antique Show and Appraisal Fair in that wonderful town in Indiana this coming weekend. And that made me think back to the last appraisal fair I did a couple months ago in Newburgh at another wonderful antique show. You'll have to see the antique show on my live channel because I didn't get time to film. We were so busy. Even there, if you feel comfortable with it.
1810.
Yeah,
1810?
this is really neat.
That is wonderful.
I'm really excited to see what this looks like. So we're going to be as gentle as we possibly can, and with your extra hands, because we don't want to tear this because it's obviously very old and brittle, but this map is Kentucky and Tennessee. It's pretty amazing. Let's see, how are we doing here? Okay, there's that. It is very, very delicate.
We do, but right now it's full.
We're going to have to just sort of open it a little at a time. It's got some tears, obviously. This old paper does definitely get brittle, but what a neat and very early map this
Wait
is.
until you get up there.
Should I have it framed or just leave it alone?
Well, that is a good question. Yeah, this is really neat.
That
So
is
you've got,
awesome.
Yep, you've got Kentucky, Tennessee, and then they even show a little bit of Ohio in here, which is interesting.
What's that say? There's the date. 1855,
35.
35.
Let me take a look.
And you're also looking upside down.
Yes, 1835. So.
Wow.
Yeah, so this map, and it's great because it's got the statistical tables. It's talking about the change in population, how Kentucky has grown from 220 to 400,000 people in just a decade because people were flooding in here. Yes, that's right. Right, and of course, slaves were difficult in terms of counting because they counted as 3/5 of a person for voting. Separate them by population because they know that's going to affect. At this time, there were 4,000 slaves and 538,000 total population.
That is great.
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece, and it's now the condition, of course, is difficult because it's somewhat compromised. That is just really neat, and the color tinting is all good. These early maps are really hard to find. They have a big active market as well. Now, because of the condition of yours, you've got two choices, which is either to have it restored or to, as you were saying, maybe I should frame this and just leave it the way it is. And I think it's just a question of personal taste. If this is something that you're going to keep and look at a lot, you may actually want to have it restored. Planning on reselling, then you may want to sell it as is just because the cost of restoration is so high. It'd probably be $100 to $150 to properly restore this piece. A recent sale for a map of Kentucky from the 1770s, it went for $1,000. And it was in slightly better condition than this, but not pristine condition. Yours, because of the condition problems, is probably in the $500 to $700 range, would be my initial estimate as it sits. Because anything when you get back to the before the Civil War is just really, there's very few. There weren't that many people who were literate, there weren't that many people who were traveling, so there just weren't a lot of these made.
Now we're friends, so I want to hear what you say about
That's
her.
great. Hey, that's fine. Everybody's welcome to sit and listen.
Hi.
Okay, so how did you get this piece?
I bought it at an estate auction about 50 years ago. I've had it for a long time.
Oh, that's really neat. And it's interesting that you got it at that time. So it's green turtle tobacco. And about 50 years ago is when people really started collecting tobacco tins in earnest because
I think there's a cigarette.
oh, there is a little
tobacco
cigarette
tin
tin.
there,
Yeah,
too.
this is a pocket tin for Kentucky Club. And this one's going to be later. This is probably 1930s or so.
Okay.
And the Kentucky Club are cute, but we see these a lot. And this one's worth about probably $15 or $20.
Oh, I thought maybe a buck or two.
Yeah, no, for a freebie you did all right.
Okay.
But this one is really interesting. It's what they call a lunch pail style for obvious reasons, because it looks like what we think of lunch pails now. And the interesting thing about this is Green Turtle cigars. This is a little more obscure brand. With tobacco tins, the value has to do with the scarcity and then the condition relative to scarcity. Now yours, it had a life.
Kinda
It's
bad,
got,
yeah.
well, it's sort of in the middle. This is probably about a number 3 or 4 on a 10-point scale, with 10 being the best and 1 being it's completely rusted and dented and has holes. It's kind of a medium scarcity. It's not a super rare one. There are certain tobacco tins that were made for very brief periods of time, and they can be worth 4 figures. You can see tobacco tins in the $1,000 range.
What a shame.
Yeah, well, this one's pretty good though. This one is, it's a little more interesting because there's a lot of people who would collect because it's got a turtle on it. So it's not just about being a tobacco tin. In this condition, I think you're probably looking around $100 would be your approximate retail value in this condition. So it's a pretty neat piece. I like it a lot, and I think it's colorful, and I have a friend who does antique advertising, and I've never seen him have this one before, so I don't think it comes up that often.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks a
thank
lot.
you very much. I really enjoyed it, and yes, by all means.
Oh, yeah.
Hi there, come on up.
Hi. I don't know if you really know anything about this, but I thought I'd
We'll
since
do
you were
our
here,
best.
we'll give a
Let's
start.
take a
Okay,
look.
I have an extensive,
Yes.
and this is not even the tip of the iceberg. I probably have 10,000 more. They belong to my great uncle. He started collecting before World War II. And so, but I
yes.
have them from countries that no longer even exist.
Right, and that is very helpful actually, the fact that you have earlier ones. Now, a lot of these seem to be, in this book, seem to be regular postage from the time, meaning that they're not commemorative issues, and the commemorative issues are typically where the value is higher. But there's lots of reasons people collect stamps. Sometimes it has to do with a postmark. Sometimes it has to do with a variation, and you get into some of the variants. Well, here's an example. This one, this is First World War. It's German Reich, but it has Belgium stamped over it because this is when the Germans occupied Belgium during the First World War. So, so that makes that a little bit more interesting to a collector. And so when you go in, you're going to, if someone was going to do a thorough review of this, they would really look for those variants. Get back before about 1930. That's where your values start to increase, because in the 1930s, stamp collecting became really popular. FDR was a big collector, and he just got a whole lot of people started because the president did it, and it didn't cost much during the Depression because you just got old envelopes and took the stamps off. It was a hobby that a lot of people got interested in. Now, if something has not ever been used, that typically is going to be a little more valuable than something that isn't, of course. And if we were to take these out, you'd want to use cotton gloves and tweezers and the whole bit to be careful of them. The biggest money is going to be in earlier United States stamps and in earlier stamps from England. Those are the two that are the most desirable. And so those you might want to take out of the collection and have evaluated separately. But the stamp collecting really has kind of fallen on hard times. It's not as popular as it used to be. A lot of the generation that really liked this kept such big collections that they're now translating to people like you, and not everybody is as into it as the forebears were, and so there's kind of a glut. If someone were to just buy it as a collection without taking the time to go through it, they might pay you $1,000 or somewhere in that range. But if you were to have someone go into it more deeply to try to find value, I would definitely spend time on the American, the English, and anything that seems to date before 1900. because that's where you get into some of the really valuable varieties and strange things that they only made a brief period of time. And so it's those subtleties that are where the value are in stamps. So a big collection unsorted is going to sell for a price that somebody is going to then take the time and sort.
Right.
Whereas a collection that's been sorted and gone through, you can pick out the plums and sell those individually.
Sure.
Do you mind if I turn my video on? So
No, you're
I
welcome
record?
to. Tell me how you got this and anything that you know about it from your family or however you came into
I
it.
got it at an auction
You did, okay.
about 5 years ago or so.
Oh, okay, very good.
At least
And was it part of a lot, or did you buy it separately by
Separately.
itself? And do you mind me asking what you gave for it at the auction?
I looked up and I couldn't find exactly, but I have in my mind $25.
$25. Wow. Okay, very good. And was the auction in this area?
Yes.
Okay. And I imagine being an auction that they just put it out and didn't say anything about it, didn't have any background
No.
on it?
No.
Okay. Well, she is a folk art doll, and she is, obviously, she was a black doll. I would say based on the dress, which has these old vegetable dyes, it is the original clothing for the piece, and I would say based on the fabric is going to be the easiest way for us to date this. Shortly after the Civil War, we're probably looking somewhere between 1870 and maybe 1890 because of the fabric in the dress. It's obviously was handmade, and they would have used whatever they had because that's what you did. It's a nice large size. That's actually kind of unusual because these generally were made. If it was a black doll back then, it was generally made by a black family for their kids because they couldn't afford to go buy
Right.
a porcelain doll or that sort of thing. So it's all going to be fabric. The buttons are also consistent with middle Victorian period. And so, and she's got all of her undergarments, and the overall condition is good. It's not perfect, but you wouldn't expect perfect with something that was a folk art piece. It sat in a sunny place for a while, so the front of the dress is a little faded compared to the rest. And she's lost her hair. It was, to tell you the truth, she probably had a human hair wig originally because people would have these little things called hair receivers that they would keep on their
Yes, I know
dresser.
what those are.
And they put hair in them because they used it for other purposes. They used it for stuffing pillows. They used it for making dolls. They used it for whatever they could think to do. Sometimes they wove it into jewelry. So I believe she probably had a human hair wig that is long since gone. And I don't think that really affects the value because the value of this is mainly as a folk art piece. So the fact that she's a little imperfect, a little worn, a little faded is actually part of the charm. It's really on the large size, and I would say that because of that, because of the age, because it's got the original clothing, I would think a value in the $250 range might be possible on this if you got the right collector. And the doll market is not as strong, and the black Americana market is not as strong as they were when you bought the piece 25 years ago, but you got a great deal at $25. So even still,
Yes.
I think that she's a really neat piece, and she's just got such expression.
Okay.
And then this
This is a
quilt is
quilt.
another really
And
neat
it
old
is
thing.
dated 1888.
Wow. Yeah, this is very nice as quilts go. Because it's a little older than what we usually see. We see a lot of 20th century quilts, but this one, like you say, has the date. JLD, May 27th, 1888. That is just beautiful. And it also has initials on the panel here
Yes.
and here as well. And what would be interesting to know, which we may not be able to ever really tell, is were these the initials of people who made it, or was it various members of the family and one person made this? A lot of times when you see these initialed, it was a quilting bee and a
Yeah,
bunch
I
of
think
people
that's
came
what-
together to make one quilt for somebody, and I suspect that's what it was.
I think so.
That it was a presentation piece. You know, it's tattered and torn and a little threadbare, but the fact that it's this old, it's got the old indigo dye blue. It's a lot of these are hand-dyed fabrics, and even the pieces they bought that were pre-printed are obviously old. While the quilt was made in the 1880s, some of these quilt pieces probably are as far back as 1830, 40, 50. Just really neat. I like the diamond block, the way they've set it up. It is pretty worn. Do you mind me asking, do you remember what you gave for this?
I think $45.
$45. Okay, well, you got, again, a very good deal. Regardless of the condition, I still think that this, because of the age and the interest and the patterning, I still think could be $200. And I'm trying to be conservative there because the condition does matter and would affect the value, but it's just, it's a couple of generations older than what we usually see. When you go in there, you're going to see some really nice 1930s era quilts, and they're going to price as high as what I'm telling you because they're in pristine condition, but they're 2 or 3 generations later than this one. So,
Okay,
yeah, you have something very nice.
okay, thank you.
Oh, how cute. So you have the girl and the boy as a match set. And this one also is handmade and is going to be a piece that was made for kids to play with and probably by someone in the family. This one is a little more skillful and a little more detailed. It's also a little later in time than the other piece. How did your mother get these? Hey.
No.
And again, you see a little bit of fading from the front to the back. When you see these striped pants and this type of fabric, I think this pair we're probably looking at having been made sometime right around 1890 to possibly 1900, 1910. I wouldn't think it would be any newer than that. It's great because it's dressed with the ribbons and everything, so this one was a little fancier. It's all the original clothes. I think this is a really neat piece, and the fact that there's a set is going to increase the value as opposed to one individually. So I think for your set, looking in a $250 range for the pair in the right hands.
Got some negatives from movies.
Interesting.
And we can't find, like, I mean, we know this is a Flash Gordon movie. Some are glass and some are not.
And let's see, I might put my gloves on for this because I don't want to touch the surface, so.
I think they're all 5x7.
Got them at an auction in a lot of things.
In a lot, okay. It's
Probably
interesting.
$2.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting what comes through auction lots. You know, they get tired at the end of auctions, or there's just a whole lot of stuff, so they just throw it all together. And sometimes some of the best stuff comes in those lots. Flash Gordon with the some sort of a death ray machine. That is really fun. And it says right down at the bottom, scene from the rocket ship Universal production. These were actually sent out as promotional material. This might have even been something where they put it in a magic lantern projector scope, because there was a time up until the 1930s where a lot of little towns didn't actually even get the movies. They got a bunch of slides and they had to put them in the projector and show them, and that was how they did movies. These are really interesting, and I think Flash Gordon in particular has potential for value here. Let's see which other ones you have.
And I picked out the best one. There's probably 100 of them. Total.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, these are great fun. And I know what you're saying. You kind of have to, okay, and here, this one's a glass plate. So this absolutely was what this was for. This one is on the sleeve. It says Road to Ruin. And I suppose if you're balancing balls on sticks out of your mouth, maybe you are on the road to ruin. You'll sometimes see them with advertising for local stores when you see these collections.
Some of them have, like, theater names.
Some of them have theater names on them.
Chicago, I think, and maybe St. Louis. Yeah.
Interesting. Your more run-of-the-mill ordinary ones, we're typically seeing prices around maybe $8 to $12 on those. But when you start getting into some of these that are a little more interesting, particularly the Flash Gordon, where you've got these really wild space scenes, I think you could be looking more at $20 to $35 per slide on these. And it's the type of thing, yeah, here's Fred Astaire. That's great. And you can actually tell it's Fred Astaire in this one. Sometimes when they're in negative, you really can't tell. I think you got a really great collection, and honestly, the value in them, did you buy them because you like them to keep, or are you thinking you might sell? Yeah. Take the ones that are really obvious, the Fred Astaires, the Flash Gordons, the ones that are more valuable, and I would feature those individually. I think honestly eBay is probably as good a place as any to put these. You will end up making a whole lot of money on these because you have so many and they came in an auction lot for so cheap. So I think you did very well. How many overall do you think you have?
Probably 100.
Probably 100.
70 to 100.
Yeah, so you might you might end up selling for, the collection might be $1,500 to $2,000 parted out.
Yeah.
Or done by movie. I noticed you have several Rocket Ship, you have
Yes.
several Fred Astaire. You may want to divide them that way and then do them as a lot. Oh, very nice.
One of the legs, unfortunately.
One of the legs is
I need
loose.
to find someone who knows how to.
How to restring, yes. Tell me how you got this, and do you know anything about it?
My husband's uncle passed away and it was in his home.
Okay, very good. Well,
I
this
thought it was
wooden,
interesting.
I think it's interesting too. This wooden animal is going to date sometime around the 19-teens or 20s. And it was likely made by the Show and Hut company because they did a lot of the wooden figures in that time. Sometimes they're actually marked in a way where we can tell, and sometimes they're not. The legs and the way they're shaped, where it's this sort of roundness to it at the top, is typical of what I see in Show and Hut construction. And Show and Hut animals actually are pretty collectible and can sell for some pretty good prices. Some of the circus animals can go for as much as a few $100s each in the right hands. I think the donkey, you're probably looking at a value once restrung in the $75 range. And I think it would be worth doing the restringing. And the reason I think it's a Show and Hut rather than something that somebody made at home is because if you look at the way that these are carved, it looks like a machine did it, and they're very uniform. The shape of the legs is very uniform. The painting is really precise in the eyes. So it's not the sort of thing that somebody just made as folk art. Folk art pieces are usually a little rougher than this, and it's a little more obvious that it was just sort of made by hand. The people who restore dolls are the people who know how to restring. And so if you have... Yes.
Somebody. I don't.
You might, there's a couple of options around here. You might ask some of the dealers as you go in here, if you see anyone who carries dolls or that sort of thing, you might ask them if they know anyone in the area who does doll restoration.
This one's gonna be pretty obvious.
Oh yes, but it's very nice, actually. How did you get this one?
Yeah, my wife got it from her grandma.
Very good.
Yeah.
Is that opalescent?
It is, and it's what it is. It's a Fenton piece. Yeah,
right, yep.
It's a Fenton piece. It's hand painted. It has the artist's signature. There were a couple of different Kellys, but this is Tanya Kelly.
Okay.
And Tanya Kelly was one of their last artists, and her stuff does well. I would say that you might see a value somewhere in the $125 range on this piece now, but it probably costs fairly close to that when it was new. They're very desirable, and I'm going to be doing a Fenton convention at the end of July.
Oh, okay.
And they are really excited about this sort of stuff
Yeah.
now, and especially because the company's not producing like this anymore.
This is part of 8 place settings,
Okay.
okay? Along
very
with 2
nice.
serving bowls, 2 platters, and a soup tureen.
That's a pretty good full set. How did you get it?
I got it from my parents when they passed, who got it from my father's father, and he got it, and he was a streetcar conductor in East St. Louis, Illinois, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And he knew a guy that had a steady job, so he was buying a house. He rented the house to him, and he fell apart part-time and couldn't make the rent that month, So he gave him the.
He gave him the gift set in lieu of rent.
Yeah.
It's a company that we don't see as often. The names on the back here, Old Chelsea is the pattern.
Right.
And Wielden Ware is their trade name, but Winkle and Company is actually the makers.
Okay.
It is hand painted, but it's hand painted in an outline, and I suspect that the outline, the way it looks like it's done, is yes, like a transfer decal, and then they do the hand painting inside. So it's a combination of transferware and hand painting, which the English like to do around the early 1900s because it was a great way to get more color and the hand painted quality, but they could have people on a line do it because they had to just basically paint within the lines. So the tureen is going to be the most valuable piece. And the tureen, and the tureen itself, by itself, would probably sell somewhere in the range of $95 to $120, depending on where you sold it.
Okay.
The platters are probably somewhere in the $45 to $60 range each, and then the service of 8, I would think. And you've probably got a 5-place setting with a big plate and a small plate and a bowl and If you sold it as a set, it probably wouldn't bring as much as selling it individually, but who's going to
spend that much time?
Do you want to spend that much time? If you broke it all apart and sold it a piece at a time, you might be looking at 15 to 18 a piece on the dinner plates and maybe 10 to 12 each on the other pieces, and then you've got 8 of each, and there's 5, so that's 400. I mean, somewhere in the $750 to $850 price for the entire set as open stock, I would think. If you sell it as a set, you might be more in a $500 or $600 range.
So should we sell it as a set without the soup tureen and the platters?
Well, maybe. There is enough of the pheasant around that people are buying individual pieces. So you might get more money if you broke out the serving pieces and then sold the set of 8 together.
Yeah.
What you might consider doing if you're going to list it online, for example, would be to list all of it, have those pieces separate, and then have the set, but list them all at the same time. So if somebody is interested and you say, see our other auctions or go to our store, then it's all sitting right there and they could order all the pieces if they wanted.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Good morning. This is it.
Oh, wow.
That could be a little scary.
It is. That's why I would like to know its value so it can leave my home.
Yes.
Our basement, let me say basement. And I never wanted to get rid of it until I found out a value because I thought it would be one of those weird things you never know.
Yes, exactly.
And I've not been able to find anything about the artist. Now, what I did discover is the back of it, I believe, was treated from maybe a house fire because it says Serve Pro on it and they do the fire damage.
Yes,
and
that's
so
right.
I peeled it all away, and you can do the same also, and you can see what happened to the back of the canvas.
Okay.
And so that's all I really have as far as input goes.
It's definitely impressionistic and it's definitely modernistic, and while it's not everybody's cup of tea as far as style, I think the colors are good. It definitely looks like something, the way it's...
I've not been able to find anything on Pito Perez other than a Roberto Perez, but nothing to match up to this. And then I didn't know if this bottom would perhaps be his reflection down, like coming off of a lake, or the bottom of the body. So it's very confusing once you start thinking of it differently like that.
Well, and that's the idea with Impressionism, is it's supposed to leave an impression and then your mind fills in those gaps, and that's really what they're looking for. And I have to be honest, I think it really is a figure study, and that the vagueness is intentional just to have it kind of disappear and leave it to the imagination rather than being so literal. Unfortunately, I don't see any listing for this artist either. I've got a couple different databases that I use, and I'm not seeing anything with that signature. So
Pito Perez.
I have to believe that because it's fairly skillful and fairly painterly, my guess is that this was someone who was a regional artist who traveled did art shows. Somebody liked this and they bought it, and that's how it ended up in the
The
house.
trail of information I did follow from one of my mid-century groups led me to a Mexican artist.
Oh yes, I would say definitely Mexican. There's actually a band in Mexico called
Yes,
Tito
there
Perez.
is. You are absolutely correct.
Well, this is the sort of thing I remember seeing a lot as a child in California when I was growing up, and this was, you know, there were a lot of people who were doing art fairs and selling art on the street and were just accomplished, but never became famous in their own right. And I think that's what you have here. To me, the way to value this would be as a mid-century, interesting, fun, impressionist art piece, but not based on some value inherent to the artist and their work. $100 to $150 would be my initial thought if I had it to price and put in a store where I sold mid-century items and couldn't find any more information. And that's a very distinctive name and signature. I would think if there was any secondary market that in your searching and your group and my searching, that one of us, something would have come out. Hi there. I'll tell you what, why don't we just bring it right here where you don't have to move it a whole lot, because I heard this was coming and boy, you did a lot of work to move it. Now, is the pendulum on?
The pendulum is sitting in it.
Sitting in it, oh good,
And
okay.
there's no weights in it.
Okay, no weights either, well that's great. Well, let's just put this right here so everyone can kind of see and enjoy it. And then I will have you tell me a little bit about this very nice grandmother's clock.
Yeah. My mom, she was a Department of Defense teacher. When I was a child, we were at Fort Knox, and she said, I'm not taking any household goods to Germany because I want to bring my full allowance back in furniture and stuff.
Yeah.
So she brought back 5 grandmother clocks and a whole wall full of wall clocks.
Oh, neat.
This one has always been a mystery because the clock doesn't have any markings on the facing of it. The cabinet doesn't have any markings on it. I even have some pictures of the bottom of it with no markings on it.
Right.
And it was pretty unique because it was bow-shaped and it had the Star of David in it.
Yes.
She bought it more than 50 years ago in a German antique shop. So I'm thinking Holocaust acquisition.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
This is educated speculation,
Right.
but my guess is that your educated speculation is as accurate as we're going to be able to determine. It probably was done in a Jewish community. It was something that somebody, I imagine, had the Star of David put in. I think it was probably a solid panel, and they said, oh, I'd like to have that, and so somebody went ahead and did the cutout and put the glass in, because usually when we see these bow fronts, they're just solid wood. It would have been a relatively inexpensive clock when it was made, because it's not in a big fancy case. It looks like it's walnut. DRGM is that mark underneath Divina Gong, and that means registered model of the German Empire, and that mark was used up until 1952. This looks like 1920 approximately to me, and I would say at the latest, maybe even teens. The clock market is a little soft right now, so we might say that it might be, you know, $800 to $1,000. I think because of that, and because you know where it came from and have some background with it, in the right place with that story presented as our belief is based on this, you might see 1,500. Insurance value might be 1,800 to 2,000 in the current market. It's really cool. I'm so glad you brought it. I heard you were that there was going to be a tall case clock coming today, and I thought, wow, that's going to be really a feat. So
I was able to sort of carry this one, so there's another grandfather clock at my house. Well, I heard you tell Candy that you were going to be here in this area in June.
yes, I'm actually doing another appraisal fair in New Harmony.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll be in.
Oh, thank you.
I work at the
think that goes
PBS
in.
station here in town, so I'll be on the lookout.
That's great. Oh, well, good. Oh, I really look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, but this is very nice, and it's been in the family for as long as you can remember.
Oh, that's what his mother.
His mother had this. It's definitely got the old style of finish on it, and you can feel it's raised up a little bit with age, and also with the fact that nowadays we just figure everything stays perfect because we all have air conditioners and things. Well, back then they didn't have climate control, so that's why you get a little bit of this sort of alligatoring in the glaze here, in the finish, and that's a normal thing. When we look at this, what we're looking for, I do believe this is American, first of all, just like you said. And part of that is that it's got these very wide, if you look at the back here, it's got these very wide rays in the oak. And American oak trees hadn't all been cut down back when this would have been made, and the European ones mostly had, and so the second growth doesn't get those big rays in it. Now the next thing we look for is, was it made by a machine or was it made by hand? And so we look at the things like the spindles to see, are they all exactly the same? Are they turned in the same places, or are they all a little different from each other? And when I look at the ones on the back, they seem like they're all pretty uniform. So they started using machines in making furniture in the middle 1800s. That tells us that this was probably made sometime after about 1850 and before, I would say, from this style, especially with these metal attachments here. These are the way that they put things together in about the 1890s. So I think this is going to date back to probably 1875, 1880, somewhere in there. Now, rocking chairs kind of go up and down in value. Sometimes they are really popular at a given moment and sometimes not as much. And right now is sort of a not as much time. Our main customers for these are people who are expecting babies because they want something they can rock the baby in. But having said that, I see prices as high as about $200 to $225 on these days. You can sometimes find them for less than that, but if you were going to put it in a good antique store and hold out for what it's really worth, that would be the number.
These are from the 36 Olympics.
These are pretty great, actually. So these, yes, these are from the 1936 Olympics. They are really interesting because they have, rather than just prints, they actually have what they call tip-ins. So these are photo prints rather than just a printed page. And it says the Sports Fest of the People, but of course, we also have a great picture of Hitler because it was very important to Hitler to sponsor the Olympics to show Germany's place in the world at that time. Hitler had a little bit of a bad time at the Olympics. This is 1936 and you can see all the Nazi flags in the stadium, and it's really the beginning of him presenting Germany as a show of force. He's starting to promote at home that the Aryan race is the master race and no one can compete. So Jesse Owens, who was black, comes over from the United States and wins all the track and field events. And Hitler was so angry he would not go to the podium and present him his medal. It's really a fascinating one. It's in great shape. We don't see these in very good condition usually because most of these were lost during the Second World War. So the fact that this exists is really a neat thing, and they're pretty valuable, actually.
One of them has a fold-out map in the back. I think it's this one.
That one.
Yes, this is the second one, and this shows all of
the Olympics.
Yeah, this shows all of where the Olympics were held in Berlin. This is a really interesting set of books here. $250 to $300 range for the pair.
Then we have this fairy tale book.
Printed in Hamburg. Oh, and this also has nice tip-ins as well, and these are color prints. The books always seem to be worth more money if they had these where they added the prints and photos in rather than printing them as part of the page. And the reason they did that back then was because it was less expensive for them, but it also makes it more interesting to people now. Now, the condition isn't perfect. There's a few little tears. It seems that those are selling around, in that condition, around $50.
Oh, okay.
Wow, well, this is really a great piece of Civil War era memorabilia, and you said your grandfather is listed in the great-great-grandpa. Well, of course not your grandfather. We're all far too young for that.
James Watson, James H. Watson, right here.
Wow, that is fascinating. He was a private in the Indiana Volunteer Cavalry. Wow, that is fantastic, and what a beautiful piece this is. I mean, there was such an outpouring of emotion over this because what a horrible event it really was for everybody involved. And so the memorial things are just beautiful.
Yeah, he was captured and he was in Andersonville prison.
Oh, I've been to Andersonville. It made me weep. It was
my grandmother
horrifying.
said when he came home, he probably didn't weigh but 80, 90 pounds.
Prisoner of war camps just never turn out well for anybody. You think, oh, it's so cruel. Well, nobody in the South had any food or anything left by the end of the war either. I mean, everybody was starving. It was just a horrible, horrible situation. And yeah, when I saw how they had thousands of people and you see what a small space they were enclosed in, it's just horrifying. So thank goodness he made it. I mean, he was lucky. About half of the folks didn't get out of there alive. Well, it's fascinating for so many reasons. The color is really good. Has this been in the family forever, I imagine? Yeah. And I suspect that it was done, it says it was done at Columbus, Indiana, and, oh no, it says mustered into service. 1864 by Captain J. Locke at Columbus, Indiana. Yeah, just fascinating. It tells so many stories. The colors are really great. The condition is really good. My feeling about this, of course, the value is the most to you because it relates to a family member. But there is so much interest in this era and a lot of interest in anything that really has detailed information about who served and where. I would think if you put this in an auction devoted to Civil War related items or a shop that was very specifically dedicated to this, that you might see $700 to $1,000 would be a high-end estimate perhaps, but I think definitely possible.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say for insurance purposes, I would insure it for $1,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And would you, I mean, this is the way it was originally framed, and I never, would you keep it like this? I mean, it does not bother me, honestly. I display it at home and...
Well, when you say originally, this backing...
for me.
This backing is not original, and I would recommend taking this to, since it sounds like something that's going to stay in the family, I would recommend taking it to a frame store. You've got just a little water damage here. I wouldn't really try to do anything about that necessarily. You could, but I don't think you need to.
No.
But I would have the back removed carefully and see if it has an acid-free backing between this backing and the print, and if it doesn't, I would have one put in. It doesn't cost much, and it will keep the acids in this backing from getting in and causing spotting on the piece. And since it's something you plan to keep for a long time, I would do that.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other thing.
Yes.
This, I know nothing much about it except for it was my neighbor who was like a grandmother to me.
Aw, this is really cute, and it's a kind of jewelry I really like. This is costume jewelry. This was done sometime in the 19-teens or possibly into the 20s, and it is Czechoslovakian glass. They made a lot of this type of costume jewelry, and it was fun, and the flappers really liked it because it dangled and it shimmied and it shook, and it just has this really neat aspect to it. They used a lot of metal work. You know, there's none of these individual components is particularly valuable because it was just glass and it was some sort of a soft metal like tin lead combination or something. But it's the look of these. This is what is so popular about these now, and I think that
I mean,
this
the back
piece
is even so.
Yeah, even the backs have detail. I mean, they just did such a nice job with them, and I think that you're probably looking at a value around $125 on that piece.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
We're watching your video.
Oh.
I learned so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad. I sure enjoy doing it.
That was my grandmother's, and my dad would have been 102 this year, so it's that
Aw,
old.
that is very pretty. And yes, this is a nice piece of cloisonne, and it's an earlier piece, earlier than we usually see. This piece is lighter than most cloisonne pieces we see, but it is absolutely cloisonne, and it is absolutely an older piece. The black field is a nice color to offset, and I would say that this is probably late dynastic or early national, with the field having not a lot of design in the background, that this is Japanese rather than Chinese. It's very pretty with the birds on it. Condition is really good. It doesn't have anything that I can identify a maker with. My sense of the value of this piece is probably in the $125 range, and I think it dates to about 1915 roughly.
And I bought it at a flea market about 40 years ago for 20 bucks.
You paid 20 bucks for this 40 years ago. Well, that is really beautiful, and it's nice that the scene continues on both sides. And it's interesting because it's a very Western looking scene. You know, it looks like it could be Europe, or it could even be the United States. You can see the way that the child is dressed. This is typical of late 1910s or early 1920s design, but the mark on the bottom is hand-painted Nippon, and it's got the dragon handles. And the M in the wreath there is Morimura Brothers, and they were the brothers in Japan who decided to start exporting to the United States, so they built factories in Japan, and eventually those factories became Noritake, China. And so it is an early piece of Noritake. It's got the enamel beading. I always find it interesting when they mix these. Obviously, they're looking at a Western market here, but the dragons are an Asian motif, so it's kind of a mix of things. It dates sometime between 1915 and 1925. And I would say the value on this is probably these days in the $75 to $100 range. And I think that that could go up. There were a lot of reproduction pieces done in the 1980s and 90s with a look-alike mark, and it scared a lot of people out of the market. And now younger people are getting into the market and realizing that there are ways that you can tell. We're more sophisticated about knowing the difference now. So I think that shadow over the market is starting to lift. And then this is a cool thing. It is a paperweight. Oftentimes we see these as banks. Pilgrimage to the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln, June 9th, 1927. So, and this is for the Louisville Credit Men's Association. So some group of people who were involved in banking went on a trip to see Lincoln's home, and they...
That's my granddad.
Oh, is your granddad? Oh, how cool. And they actually had this little bunch of castings made specifically for them for their trip on this date, which makes it a little bit more interesting than the usual Lincoln bust that we see. And because of that, I would say that this might value around, I'd say $45 to $60 range. But that's really interesting that, so he was part of that group that went.
Oh, he was a lawyer, but he went with, I know.
Yes.
That he was with, maybe he was their lawyer. I don't know.
Right,
Yeah.
right, or knew somebody in the group and they said, come along, and what a neat thing. That's great that it's so specific. There's a lot of Lincoln collectors, and it's funny, once you get to Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, you run into a lot of them. So this is definitely the place to have that piece.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, that was fun. Hello there.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So this is part of that thing there.
I wondered about that. Hi there. Oh, this is, wow. Okay, I'll tell you what, let me set this here, or do you want to set it next to? Yeah, maybe we'll just keep them separate so we don't have them break. This is beautiful. Where did you get it?
This was in our house. The house we
bought it.
Really? Oh,
It was
very
actually
good.
installed,
It was installed in the,
yeah.
oh, it's very nice. It's Italian, and it's called Fiore Blanco, and that means basically white flower. And they did a lot of things like water fonts in this and other decorative objects. I haven't really seen a lot of chandeliers and lighting made with this, though. This would have been done probably sometime in the 1960s or 70s. About 10 years ago, they were very popular if they were the metal ones with the colors. Well, now they prefer, because of all the people are painting their houses gray now, so they want white accents to go with the gray. So this is a perfect time for a piece like this. Even though it's an old piece, it's very current to the market now. And because of that, Now, this doesn't mean you could go out and get this if you were selling it. I assume you took it down because maybe it's not your taste, or but I think it's very saleable. Now, if you were a dealer selling this and you were selling to a high-end clientele, you might charge as much as $1,000 for this. If you're a private party selling to somebody, probably more like $300 to $400 is a likely selling price. And I would say that the way to sell this isn't so much something, there are collectors of this, but I don't think a collector is your customer as much as a decorator. This is for somebody who loves it and wants it for their house. So I think the best way to sell this, if that's what you want to do, is probably to use Facebook Marketplace or somewhere else where you can put it out so that people in the area see it and put a price on it and let them say, I'm interested, or come look at it, and then go from there. Because if you sell to a dealer, you know, a dealer is going to say, well, it's fragile and it's big and it's hard to move and I have to wait for a customer and maybe I only want to pay $100 or $200, but I think it's a pretty good piece. So I think you get the most money selling it yourself.
Okay.
And if it were me, I would probably put it on Facebook Marketplace and list it at $400 or $450 and just wait for the person who really loves it to see it.
Okay. All right.
It's really nice.
Thank you.
It's really nice, but I understand it would be, I wouldn't want to dust this every day.
No. Thank you.
What nice pieces of Torquay you have. I've always been partial.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I sold a lot this weekend. I
Oh,
sold a lot
good.
the last show, too,
Oh,
so
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad
dwindling.
to hear that there's interest in it again. I always thought it was really neat. The butter dish, that's something different.
Did you have a good day? I heard you had lots of
Oh, it was so busy. I just got done. I was hoping to come in and film and show you guys and get a little lunch and shop. And oh no, there wasn't time for any of that. But that's actually a nice thing. I mean, that's what we hope for. So
sure.
I'm glad that I figure it helps the show, and I'm glad that they turned out.
Yes.
That's really neat.
Exactly.
But I'll be in New Harmony, so
I will too.
I'll see you there.
Okay.
Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.